Today on Ham Radio Tube, we are going to build these. Check this out. Tiny little 10 watt, 2 meter bandpass filters. You've got an SMA version and a BNC version. These were designed by Mike, K6STR, after experiencing RFI issues on summits that he was doing. And then he went to ARA, N6ARA, for sales and distribution and stuff. And ARA sent these to me. Comes a kit, very easy to build. So let's get to it. Let's build one of these. So your TinyFilter kit is going to come in 2 bags. In one bag, you're going to have the PCBs, so you have the filter itself. These should be pre-tuned from ARA when you get them, but there's little capacitors there that you can change if you need to, but you shouldn't. So be careful with those. And then you have this guy. This is, it'll make a little bit more sense later, but this is basically just to keep things rigid. There's no like real electrical stuff going on in that board. And then in the second bag, we're gonna have all kinds of stuff. We're gonna have a BNC male and female, or if you opt for the SMA, you're gonna have an SMA male and female, okay? You're gonna have a couple 3D printed parts. This is part of the case, and then you're gonna have this little guy that's just a spacer that's used during in assembly, but it's not actually in the final build. You're gonna have some like Faraday tape to wrap the whole thing before we apply the heat shrink. So I think I'm gonna do the BNC in this video, but the steps should be pretty much identical. The only difference is just what connector you're using. So let's have at it. So the first step, we want to notice we have 2 sides of this board. You can see the TX there, and you can see the antenna there. So we want to solder on our BNC or SMA connectors, thusly with the 2 ground pins sticking up, because that other board's going to solder to this. But we don't have a real tight fit, so we need to actually bend the center pins of the BNC down a little bit. And I'm just using some pliers that don't have any teeth. I'm just gonna bend them down a little bit. Just be gentle. And we wanna have enough bend so we can get a bit of a purchase on the PCB, just like that. And then we'll do the same thing for the other side. Just a little bit. Just some happy little pressure. And then we want to do our best to make sure that it is nice and centered while also firmly being seated against the PCB. Now we're going to use a tiny bit of solder and just tack this center pin to the PCB. And we'll repeat for the other side. And once we have the center pins tacked, just go ahead and make sure that everything's nice and straight. If it's not, you can go ahead and reheat the center pin and adjust accordingly. Now, the next step, we're gonna turn it on its back and we're gonna solder the 4 ground pins to the PCB. Soldering BNC grounds is my nemesis, and flux helps a lot. As good as it's gonna get. Now we can flip this over, be very careful, it's very hot. We wanna make sure that we have our center pins soldered well, because we just tacked them before. I'll take that as a win. Now once this is cooled down sufficiently from all that solder, we're gonna take this little spacer and we're gonna cover up those little capacitors there, and we're gonna take this other board. And note, there are 2 sides to this. So notice there's 1 pad on each side. That's if you're installing the SMAs. With the 4 pads, this is for the BNCs. So we're gonna slide this under the ground lugs for the BNC, and that spacer is there to make sure that we have an actual good contact with the pads there, and then we can go ahead and solder each individual ground lug to this board. And I just clamp this in a small vise. This is going to work a lot better for me than my helping hands that don't fit. But this is just structural. We're not really making electrical contact here. We're just using the principles for making electrical contact. And I trust you'll all do a better soldering job than I will. Now we can go ahead and remove the spacer and discard that. Now before we go on to the next step, if you own some type of VNA, now would be the time to test it, because the next step, we're gonna cover these things up. Now I'm gonna be honest with you, I have no business owning this and I have no idea how to use it, so I'm not gonna show what this looks like on my spectrum analyzer. However, ARA has put up on the build instructions what it should look like, and it should look something like this. Good filter, you got good pass through on the 144 megahertz spectrum there, and you see a nice sharp roll off either side of it. These little knobs are for adjusting that. I'm not one to tempt fate, so I'm gonna leave well enough alone. Now we can do the final steps of assembly. We're gonna take this cap here and we are going to cover up these holes with it, thusly. Then we're gonna turn it over and we're gonna take this little sticky Faraday cloth stuff and we're gonna apply it to the front of this where it says TinyFilter. And we're gonna wrap it all the way around. Until there is no more. Now we can go ahead and slide the heat shrink over, and we want to put the TinySA over the case so it looks pretty. Might have to finagle it a little bit to get it in there. That looks good. And then we heat shrink. And there we have our beautiful TinyFilter 2-meter bandpass filter. So that's pretty sweet. You can have a cool little 2-meter bandpass filter on either your HT, or if you got a little HF or all band all mode radio like 705 or 818 or whatever, you got little bandpass filters on them. That's so freaking cool. So thanks ARA for sending these out. Thank you guys for watching. Links in the description. My name is Mike, K8MRD. We'll see you next time on Ham Radio Tube 73.